I'm Richard Chambers, Senior Internal Audit Advisor at Audit Board, and welcome to another in my continuing series, Agents of Change. I'm joined today by Heather Acker. She's the Risk Advisory Managing Partner at Baker Tilly and currently serves on Baker Tilly's Board of Partners. Heather has over 25 years of professional service experience and oversees a team of hundreds of professionals who specialize in helping clients address governance, risk, and compliance issues in areas such as internal audit, enterprise risk management, regulatory compliance, and management of financial and operational risks. Heather, welcome.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, Heather, there's just so much we could talk about. The environment we're operating in for the last 2 or 3 years has been truly remarkable in some ways, kind of a little unsettling, a little scary, but it is a era that's ripe for change. And that's really the theme that I want to explore with you today is how agents of change in the internal audit profession specifically, but in general, how agents of change can thrive in this environment.
Yeah, what an outstanding question. And Richard, I loved your book, Agents of Change. There were so many parts of it that really resonated with me. One of them in particular is the way you described the internal audit environment through both the lens of ways internal audit can protect value and also create value. And the reason why that was so moving to me is because we've been working in an environment with our clients thinking about enhancing and protecting value. So very similar words, how we both will do many of the traditional internal audit functions, the things you might bucket in that protect value category, but also the enhance value, the more strategic work that we have been doing a lot of. Being relevant and sustainable, is another phrase we often use for the future. How do we look ahead, think about the changes that are coming and help to prepare for those? To me, internal audit, sits in a very pivotal place right in the middle of that, right? In the ability to know an organization, to have breadth of relationships and be able to provide strategic perspectives.
I think those are great points. We specifically in the book talk about that internal auditors have this unique opportunity to be change agents because they have all this great institutional knowledge they built up in the company over time, and they can be catalysts, kind of taking that information and sort of populating it throughout the organization. Do you see that as a role for internal audit?
Yeah, absolutely. We think of this often through the lens of advisory auditing, right? Thinking about the strategic changes that are occurring, thinking about how to position, an organization appropriately to deal with the risks that accompany, those changes, and be able to set up controls and structure so that, we can avoid some of the compliance challenges or operational disruption, that sometimes happens at a time of change. So when I think about agents of change, I really think about it through that advisory, enhancing value lens with an eye towards the future.
I think that's so true. I alluded to at the beginning of our session the disruptive nature of the era we're living through. And these last 2 years have really represented massive disruption and a heightened, complex risk landscape for the world in general and for businesses and government organizations in particular. How can organizations ensure that their internal audit function is identifying and monitoring and mitigating the kind of risks that can swiftly damage the organization?
Yeah, and I think you said it really well in your book again, and you've used this phrase in other conversations you've had at how are we auditing at the speed of risk? I love that phrase. I think it's very fitting for this disruptive time that we're in. A few things. One, I think a lot of it is a mindset, right? An agile mindset. Regardless if one is applying agile methodologies, an agile mindset, is really important in our work in all phases. Being dynamic, being willing to pivot, is very important. That even pre-pandemic, I think sometimes we struggled with matching risks with the appropriate dedication in our audit plans. Take the pulse of internal audit surveys for many years, that identified cybersecurity as a top risk. However, the priority it got in the audit plan, fell down quite a few notches. And so what organizations need to be thinking about is not only how are we appropriately addressing those risks in a dynamic way, but also how are we making sure the internal audit function has the authority and ability to modify its plans, to address those risks appropriately. Specifically in this time of disruption in the pandemic, we saw a significant uptick in the phone a friend, right? That the co-sourced internal audit services that providers like Baker Tilly did, where we might have had specialized, experts in certain areas, or a lot of the traditional internal audit staff got redeployed to other priorities during the pandemic that were emerging risks. So we offered, another alternative of some more expertise to come into organizations and help, be nimble, address those risks as they were occurring in that time of disruption.
Thanks. I think you gave me exactly the answer I would have expected there, because you guys are leading experts in the field and one of the most respected firms. So it's great to hear that that your thinking is aligned with what we're seeing and what we believe to be the case as well. One of the top challenges that leaders are facing in 2022, internal audit leaders in particular, is how to recruit and retain talent in the face of the Great Resignation. We're hearing a lot of chief audit executives talking about having vacancies they're struggling to fill. What strategies do you use in attracting new talent, and what would you advise chief audit executives to do?
Yeah, wonderful question, and something actually very close to my heart. Talent is a really important piece of my leadership role. Not to be a pessimist here, but I think we all can read from economists that this talent situation, is likely to continue for a number of years. Some predict through 2025, and so our need right now to think about creative and long-term solutions is extremely important. What we've done in our organization recently is we created a purpose, and that is to unleash and amplify talent. And so the decisions we make within our organizations go through a lens of how this is helping us, advance our talent, unleash and amplify through the words of our purpose statement. We're doing that through a few different things. We're thinking about flexibility in a new way. We're thinking about how to use technology in different ways so that we can, be using our talented team members' time to really add value to organizations. We're doing new training methodologies and thinking about ways to really deepen professional skill sets among our people. And we're also experimenting. I'll share our practice in risk advisory at Baker Tilly is in the middle of piloting a 4-day compressed work week. Just something that you read about being effective, and we're studying the effectiveness in our work. And it's been fascinating to find how our effectiveness is increasing, our team member satisfaction is increasing, and we're learning along the way. What does this mean for a potential model for the future? Again, an experiment, but we're learning along the way. A few things that I think are going to be really important that we're looking at, that CAEs should be thinking about as well, and that's looking for talent in non-traditional places. Examples of such that we've found some success, it's expanding the majors we've traditionally looked at right out of the university. That's not that unique. But how else might we be finding some talent in non-traditional ways? In our firm, we've found some really significant experience with military veterans, coming from a background and deploying all of those skills that they bring to the table and upskilling them maybe on some of the internal audit needs that they need to build upon. We also are working with an organization that employs people that with neurodiversity. That's an extremely untapped talent market in my mind that can provide a ton of value in the internal audit space. And so challenging ourselves to think about looking in non-traditional sources, I think will help us, uncover a lot of future internal audit professionals that maybe we're not thinking about today.
Great insights. I think, particularly as organizations struggle in this talent race. But one of the things we're starting to hear, and I wrote about this recently, is that recession watch is kind of setting in, and that as a result, there's some pressure on internal audit budgets. One of the ways I've always advised internal audit departments to respond to constrained resources is to use what I call capacity multipliers, things that processes and tools that basically allow you to have a greater capacity even when your resources are constrained. And one of the most I think one of the most reliable capacity multipliers is technology. The more I, as a chief audit executive, can leverage technology, the more the more impact I'm able to generate, the more risks I'm able to address with the staffing that I have. What is Baker Tilly doing to leverage technology when it comes to helping clients be more efficient and effective?
Yeah, fantastic question. And you're absolutely right. I think in general, as you know, our profession has at times been slow to adapt some of the technologies that are available to us. And so, why not use now in this recessionary time, this disruptive time with talent? What a perfect opportunity to really be thinking it's time to up the game on some of these techniques. And so, a few of the things that we're really putting into use and further investing in, quite honestly, in our organization are things such as dynamic risk assessment tools. Again, how do we audit at the speed of risk and do it with more sophisticated tools that don't require us to run through a lengthy time-consuming process every time, to be nimble, to use more advanced technologies such as AI, RPA, in some of our work, that the actual audit techniques that we can be applying RPA technology to, and then data analytics, right? How are we using data to inform risks in the environment as well as the audit result, the audit plans that result? I'll even say the use of things such as Zoom that we're on today, the platforms that enable us to be virtual auditing in ways that we haven't done before are all examples of things we could continue to do more of as we build out technology and innovation within our practice.
I'm often asked by chief audit executives and others in the profession, what do I think the profession is going to look like in 10 years? And what kind of challenges and opportunities do I see lying ahead? And I guess my question to you would be, if you had a crystal ball and you could look into the future, what do you believe the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity is for internal audit in the coming decade?
Yeah, I love that question, right? It's how are we addressing the risks of the future and being relevant and sustainable as we think about it. And in my opinion, that requires us to be extremely involved and strategic within the organizations, that we're working, as well as have a significant lens on what's going on outside of our four walls. And when I think about what are the most transformative things I see on the horizon in the next decade, I think of three things primarily. One is continued focus on regulatory changes. To me, what's occurring with ESG now may very well follow a path similar to SOX or ERM, past decades. So keeping an eye on that and figuring out how ESG reporting fits into the internal audit role. Second is technology advancements, and not just the use of technology like we talked about, but recognizing that as organizations implement more technology, there will be more associated risks. So whether it's cyber or crypto or other types of transformative system changes, thinking about how we design audits of the future to make sure to address those. And then the third is specialization. I really do think that our profession is getting more and more specialized to address these more complex risks. And so how we think about the need to build that specialization within organizations, or ask for help on the outside, like we offer in outsourced, co-source solutions. Those three things I think are really the crystal ball I have for the future. I often like to say to our teams, the challenges that businesses are facing really create the opportunities for internal audit. And, for that reason, I think it's an extremely exciting time to be in the internal audit profession and to be able to really guide organizations to value into the future.
Well, thank you for the insights, and it is an exciting time to be in internal audit, and I look forward to having a chance to chat with you more and get to know you and all of your colleagues there at Baker Tilly going forward. Listen, thank you so much for joining me today. I think it's you've provided some great insights, and it's been great for our listeners to hear your perspectives on internal audit and what the future looks like.
Wonderful. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate you having me.